Welcome to The More You Know, presented by Abermor. Here we're trying to break down the myths about people with differing abilities and ask the difficult questions that everyone wants to know but is afraid to ask. Today we're joined by author, producer, show director, actor, just to name a few, and now Abermor's newest board member, Greg Triggs. Hi, Greg.
Hello, Daniel.
Greg, I've known you for almost 2 decades. It's kind of hard to believe. And we've worked closely for many of those years, and you shared a lot of great stories and about your life, about your family, about your career and choices you've made and people that you've met and the people that inspire you. So with your newest book, drawing on a lot of those experiences, I thought it'd be a good time to share some of those great moments. So first, tell us a little bit about what it was like to be a kid in the Triggs family.
Well, it could be argued I never was a kid in the Triggs family because I think I grew up pretty quickly. I'm the fifth of six kids. So I grew up thinking I was the fifth of six kids. And so I was surrounded by a lot of adult, older energy. My parents had children over the course of 23 years. So I became an uncle when I was 4. But in the fifth position, my sister, who happens to be my youngest sister and is number 4, was born blind and mentally challenged due to being extremely premature. And then my youngest brother was born mentally challenged. So I grew up between 2 siblings with very specific needs in the mid-century when things were very different. I think my brother and sister really experienced the evolution of this era's strengths and benefited from them. So when I was a little boy, I remember very clearly, it was odd. My sister is 9 years older than I am, but I would babysit her. I would be in the leadership role when my mother had to go away. Or when my mother just needed us out of the house, I was kind of supervising. And I so clearly remember there was a coffee shop about a block and a half away from my parents' house, and my mom would give me $1 and tell me to go buy everyone a Coke and split a plate of fries. And all the old ladies who were there for a cup of coffee and a donut would look at me like I was this little Dickensian angel that was just chaperoning these 2 challenged people. And their pity was really tangible and frustrating. And it hurt me because that was my normal. There was nothing to feel bad about for me. We were having a blast. And I always resented that people thought my brother Butch and my sister Valerie needed their pity because we had it.
Did you ever feel like Butch and Val felt the pity as well, or that was just you noticing that pity?
I like to think they didn't know it. I've certainly seen over the years Butch and Valerie be hurt by people underestimating their potential, and that makes me angry. But people don't know what they don't know. And so I certainly feel as though I can't expect people to be in line with my thinking without a conversation about that or some kind of dialogue, because I'm in a very unique circumstance, right? I know very few people who grew up with a multitude of needs in their family. And so when I look back on how it affected my family or how it was to grow up in my family, we had very different experiences. My parents obviously had their version of it, which was different, especially at that time, from the male versus female, father versus mother experience. Quite a few of my siblings grew up without the expectation that that was normal, so they had to adjust to it. I feel like I was fortunate for it just to be oh, okay, it's Tuesday and my sister's blind. Um, it wasn't an adjustment for me. And, the world has a way of telling you that what's normal for you is not normal for the rest of the world. And a story I've told you before, when I was in college, and of course, when you go to college, you're processing how different you lived versus the way the rest of the world did. It's this, this intersection uh, of different points of view and lifestyles, right? And so I wrote a paper that was supposed to be inspired by our family for an English class, for a creative writing class. And the professor wrote in the paper, please see me after class. So I waited to see the professor, and he said, this is beautifully written. And I said, well, thank you. And he said, but it's implausible. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, there's no way all of this happened to one family. And it had. And I remember going back to the dorm and processing that and essentially being called a liar and someone tried to take away my truth, which we would never have said back then. And I called my parents, and we must have laughed for 10 minutes. And if people are watching this and looking for inspiration for their own families, I would just encourage them to remember to laugh and embrace the joy of the situation, embrace the possibilities of it instead of the limitations, because you're going to be doing better, I think, by the members of your family by not treating them as other, you know, um, but treating them as what and celebrating what they bring to the family, right? Because it's so easy to generalize and look at challenged or disabled, however you want to, whatever label you want to put on it, people, and define them by their challenges. When the truth is, their challenges are just an aspect of them. My sister Valerie is bossy as hell. She is a control freak. She is not a compromiser. She expects you to come around to her. And my brother Butch is generous and kind, and within his situation, he has an incredible gift for numbers. He can figure out anything to the cent. He could meet someone that I was friends with in grade school and remember their birthday. He's just got that steel trap kind of mind. And I've wasted a lot of time coming to the point of view that I'm shooting my mouth off about now. I used to look at Butch and Val and think, well, what would they be if this weren't their reality? What would they have become? And truth is, they became what they became, and they are who they are. And I'm just lucky to know them. They've been an incredible blessing in my life.
Was there any kind of situation where your family didn't really agree on what to do with the care of the chihuahua? Who makes those kinds
Yes.
of decisions?
Now that my sister Emily, who is a wonderful guardian, my sister Emily and I are involved. Emily, frankly, does a lot of the heavy lifting because she's still in our hometown. And I am the checks and balances. Sometimes if I have a concern with the decision that's being made, I usually talk to Emily before I talk to anyone else who might be involved in the situation. I try to make sure, I think this is an important part of the dynamic. I try to make sure that even though I can't be as physically involved, that Emily knows there's a sounding board and someone who will do the things that she is unable to do.
So it's important not only to support the people with special needs, but also the support the people that are supporting them.
I think so. And we're living in such an aggressive, divisive time that whenever I can remind people that kindness is not a weakness And sometimes it is harder to be kind than it is to just entrench your thinking. And indeed, kindness usually leads to more change and growth than aggression and anger. And I try to bring that to being a member of a family with special needs. And I think my siblings do as well. As I said, Valerie can be very bossy. Butch is very hardworking. And worth noting, most of the people with special needs that I know have incredible work ethics. And you're lucky to have them on your team. And everything that I've talked about benefiting from my experience can happen in the workplace for the people who are not dealing with similar challenges. But what I try to remember now is that Butch and Valerie are adults, and they have their own opinions, and they have their own dreams and hopes for their lives that are not mine to judge. My job, if you want to call it a job, is to help make sure that they get those opportunities and that their lives are built on as firm a foundation as possible. Sometimes they'll make a decision and I'll think, well, that's not going to work, but it's not dangerous and they're going to grow from it. And who's to say I won't be wrong? I've certainly been surprised by the results over the years in a wonderful way. And, I'm in my 50s now. It's wonderful when life surprises me in a good way, And so to remember that you don't necessarily automatically know the answers is a good place from which to help make decisions, not make the decisions, help make the decisions.
So you mentioned that they're hard workers. What is it that they do?
My sister Valerie works for the Opportunity Center and normally of Madison, Wisconsin. And normally she puts together things like curtain rods, things that require rote assembly that since she is not sighted, she can do with her fingers, right? She loves it. She loves her job. It's, if I'm being honest, in an 8-hour shift, it's probably 5 hours of work and 3 hours of socializing, but she needs that. She, just like anybody else, needs to get out of the house. My brother, Butch, who now prefers to be called Raymond, but I still call him Butch. He has several jobs. He always wants to be doing more, right? He's working about 20 hours a week at those jobs, and he'd work 80 hours a week if he could because he loves what he does. And so when we're talking on the phone, sometimes I'll go, I think I'm going to go to Starbucks and fill out an application. And it's always my fear that an unkind person is going to be dealing with him and that his heart's going to get a little broken. I can't completely protect him from that. And it is his nature to be ambitious and want to do more. And how is that not a good thing? The good outweighs the risk. And we all have to live in the real world. So one day, gosh, over 10 years ago, he called me and he gets this tone in his voice when he's got exciting news, but he wants you to wait for it. He's good at building the anticipation. And he's like, Greg, I got some news. And he just vibrates differently in those moments when he's got something that he set in motion that he can surprise you with. I don't want to get emotional. We kind of shared that awesome moment. And then he said, that he got a job on his own. Excuse me. He loves music and he got a job at a record store. They let him alphabetize CDs. and clean up, and he gets a great discount on merchandise, which is great because he's cheap, and he did it all on his own.
And that's so amazing because what you're saying is, people with differing abilities, they still want all of the things that everyone wants. They want to be excited. They want to get things on their own. They want to be independent. They're excited about all of the same things that we want, and they want to share all of the same things that we want to share. And that's exactly what I think is so important and so needed, is that we are all the exact same. We just have differing abilities.